The member for Kooyong.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. It's my pleasure to follow the member for Corio in this place to welcome Australia's election as a temporary member of the UN Security Council. The member for Corio is a good man and he did pay tribute to a number of people within the Department of Foreign Affairs and elsewhere who have contributed significantly to this win. But he also placed a straw man before this parliament when he talked about the isolationist tendencies of the coalition. That is absolute rubbish. And his comments, together with the member for Eden Monaro, who made some outrageous slurs against Australia's longest-serving Foreign Minister, Alexander Downer, and Australia's second longest-serving Prime Minister, John Howard, should have been retracted, because it overtly politicises this debate and it glosses over the significant foreign policy achievements of the Howard government. When we talk about multilateralism, how can we forget Interfet and East Timor, what we've done in Bougainville, what we've done at a multilateral level to take on the terrorists and to stamp it out in our region, the highest level of cooperation with our most important near neighbour, Indonesia, the many FTAs, and what we did at the Doha round on the trade agenda, the counter-terrorism bilaterals, and I could go on. There was a significant foreign policy legacy from the Howard government and has been glossed over in the comments by the member for Eden Monaro and the straw man placed before this House by the member for Corio, because this coalition, both in opposition and in government, stands ready to play its part at the multilateral level in a way that is consistent with Australian values and in a manner that furthers the national interest. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, we're here to pay tribute to those who contributed to our election as one of 10 temporary members on the UN Security Council for the years 2013-14, where we will join the permanent five: the United States, Russia, China, France and Great Britain. It was interesting that the member for Corio mentioned the contribution of the former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd. One would have thought he would have voted for him, but he didn't. The member for Corio referred to the three foreign ministers: Stephen Smith, Kevin Rudd, Bob Carr, who have all contributed to this election campaign. The fact that we've had three foreign ministers in just over 5 years, or less than 5 years, is systematic and a reflection on the disunity and the chaos that we have seen on the other side. In contrast, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, the coalition had the same foreign minister for nearly 12 years of government. We've seen three on the other side in less than 5 years. The member for Corio referred to the charm of Bob Carr. I thought he was going to bring out a bouquet of flowers. That charm didn't do much for the infrastructure needs of New South Wales during the time of his premiership. Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, Australia is a significant country on the world stage. We are the 12th biggest donor to the United Nations. We have contributed more than 65,000 personnel to UN peace and security missions since 1947. And this is the 5th time that Australia will be serving on the Security Council. And the UN plays an important role in international security, giving mandates for major missions, whether it's Afghanistan or East Timor, in the work of its agencies, the World Food Organization, the World Health Organization, the conventions like the rights of the child, what it does in terms of transnational crime, and the list can go on. Australia needs and deserves to be at the top table when it comes to the United Nations. There is no disagreement from the Coalition on this point. And the fact that we have such hard-working and effective members in our diplomatic corps who act in a bipartisan, or a non-partisan, may I say, a non-partisan manner, to execute the wishes and the policies of the government of the day, is why we have been successful in this campaign. To the former Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Dennis Richardson, to our Ambassador in New York, Gary Quinlan, to Deputy Secretary Gillian Bird, to the Prime Minister's Special Envoy, Joanna Hewitt, to former Ambassador in India and elsewhere, John McCarthy, to Special Envoy Bill Fisher, to Head of the Task Force, Caroline Miller, people like Bassem Blasey, and on the Liberal side, Tim Fischer, Robert Hill, Russell Trude. I say to you, thank you for the work that you have done to help make Australia's campaign for the UN Security Council successful. But, Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, the reason why the Coalition has raised questions about this bid is not because we shouldn't be at the top table on the UN Security Council. Of course we should be. And when we get there now, in 2013-14, we've got to do a good job. And there are plenty of issues like North Korea and Afghanistan and the war on terrorism and Iran's quest for nuclear weapons. They are on the table, and we will have a seat at the table. That is a good thing for Australia, and it's a good thing for the world. But why we have raised questions in this place and outside this place is because the manner of the government's campaign did compromise our values, and it came with a cost. And it's dishonest of those on the other side to ignore that reality. It's one thing to celebrate the victory, but it's another to ignore the reality of the campaign itself. Our Governor-General was sent on an unusual 18-day tour of Africa in order to win votes. That is not the normal role for the Governor-General. We've changed our vote on Israel in the UN Security Council in order to placate some in the Arab world to win votes in the campaign. We have increased our aid budget and directed it to certain parts of the world in order to win votes. $5 billion goes towards our aid budget, and that is growing. And we have seen money in increasing amounts, in the hundreds and hundreds of millions, sent to the Caribbean, sent to Latin America, sent to Africa. Yes, we have interests there. There is no question about that. But that money has gone to those places in the world in order to curry favour. And I say, what is the Australian interest and responsibility in paying $150,000 for a statue to go outside the United Nations to commemorate the anti-slavery movement in the Caribbean and Africa? That statue should be there, but it doesn't necessarily need Australian dollars. Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, our Foreign Minister has also changed his travel itinerary in order to win votes. He went to Mongolia and Malta ahead of India and Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea is our nearest neighbour. And in Papua New Guinea, we have a terrible situation where 12,000 children under the age of 5 die every year. If I had a say, I would be saying, put some of that money towards eradicating the dangers to those 12,000 children that led to their untimely death. Go and visit Papua New Guinea and India before you go to Mongolia and Malta. Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, the other issue that I want to raise is Australia's participation in a conference for the non-aligned movement in Iran. Australia is not a member of the non-aligned movement. But Australia decided not to send its ambassador, but to send the Prime Minister's special envoy and our ambassador to the UN in New York to Tehran. Now, Tehran is a state sponsor of terrorism. Tehran is hell-bent on getting a nuclear weapon. Tehran, under Ahmadinejad and the Ayatollahs, is a danger to the world. But Australia closed its eyes to that reality in order to ensure that we had a high-level delegation present in Tehran at the meeting of the non-aligned movement for which Australia is not a member. I say shame on the government for doing that. Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, I finish where I start. Where I started. Australia is an important nation in the world. We are the 12th biggest contributor to the UN budget. We should have a bigger footprint in countries around the world, but instead this government has starved DFAT, seeing over 100 people cut in the last budget alone. There is no disagreement from the coalition that having a seat at the top table at the United Nations is a good thing. The UN does important work to better the lives of people, whether it's health, education, whether it's in the cultural sphere, the world, and of course the security sphere. The world is a better place with the United Nations. And Australia, as a significant country, should be at the top table. But I say to you with experience that the way this government has gone about the campaign has compromised our values. And it has done so in a way that I think has come at a cost. If $24 million was the only expense, I would say that was money well spent. But $24 million is a fraction of what has been spent, and as I say, hundreds of millions of dollars has been diverted from the aid budget. Mr. Acting Deputy Speaker, the United Nations is an important body. Australia's role in the United Nations at the top table is an important development. But please, as this government prepares our diplomats and our representatives to participate in the deliberations of the UN Security Council as a member of that body, do not compromise on our values. Stay true to our national interest. And remember that in diplomacy, it's values and interests that count.